The floor is yours, Sam.
Awesome. Well, I am going to share my screen. I threw something together. And thanks, Steve, for the great introduction. So I do work for Robert Half specifically on our marketing and creative teams. So I am not a designer. I have been a recruiter and client side with Robert Half for 11 years. The number one skill set that I've placed has been graphic design. So I just want to lead in a little bit with why I'm probably qualified to help. So a little bit about Robert Half. We've been around for a really long time. We're the only specialized staffing, we're the first specialized staffing agency that's out there, and we are global and we're localized. So I sit specifically here in the greater Philadelphia area, but obviously can talk to the market about the market in the entire country. And I specialize obviously within this creative realm. If you are from another country, that's great. We operate in over 20 countries worldwide. So we do have reach elsewhere if maybe someone locally might not be the best point of contact. But I just want to say this and lead in because I know Steve prepped me that people might be international, which is fantastic. The information I'm going to be providing today is for people who are looking who are US based. So I just kind of want to make sure I lead in with that. Robert Half really helps when it comes to permanent placement as well as consulting. We can give career advice. We can help you with interview prep. We can help you and push you to strong networking groups to go to. Even if you meet with a recruiter at Robert Half and they don't place you, I recommend continuing that relationship because there's people that I place 3, 4, 5 times in their career and I didn't place them the first time they were available. So it really could change. So just a little bit of why we're qualified, and I'm not just some random person up here trying to tell you how you should find a job within design. I want to kick off with the portfolio. And these are just some key things. These are broad topics, so we can definitely have a broader, just more granular discussion around this as we're kind of going through. But a couple key things that I look for when I'm looking at a portfolio is it clean and concise? Even if your portfolio is dynamic and you have motion aspects to it, I still expect it to be clean and clickable. I do always recommend more than 3 campaigns. It's great if you went to a boot camp. That's awesome if you're starting out your career. But boot camp teaches you 3 campaigns. So we always recommend having 4 plus at minimum, no more than 10. Once you hit 10 and once you start kind of looking through more stuff, I always say you're giving more options for that hiring manager to reject you. And when I say campaigns, like obviously full campaign or full case study that you're looking through. Another big thing is keeping your skills separate. I love people who are multi-skilled. That's fantastic. I love that you can do design, but on the side, you do photography. And in your last role, maybe you leaned in with that. That's phenomenal. Absolutely love that. I think that skill can come in handy. But I do recommend when you're doing your portfolio to really come in and separate too. I would say like church and state, right? Like we got to make a separate portfolio for both, because when I'm a hiring manager and I'm coming in and I'm looking at a portfolio, you have about 6 seconds to grab my attention. And if the first thing I see is photo and it takes me too many clicks to get to your design, unfortunately, the person right next to you who has more design out there is going to get the job, right? Who has less clicks from me or it's going to capture my attention more. Big tips always from this perspective. If you're a web designer I hate using digital design because I think it's cliche now to say digital. I almost feel like everyone's a digital designer, but I really recommend avoiding Dribbble or Behance. You do need to create your own website. It's hard to compare someone who uses Dribbble and Behance versus someone who created their own website. Typically, someone who created their own website will get the job over a Dribbble or Behance. If you're just starting off and that's how you're just storing your work, that's great as you're learning, totally fine. But if you are being presented to an opportunity or to a job, I really, really recommend kind of doing your own site. The only time I ever recommend PDF is if a client is asking for a piece that you referenced in an interview and you need to send it to them after. I am fine with that, but I personally will not submit a PDF portfolio to a client. I do need it to be in web form. Couple things on resumes. I'm going to start with this. I didn't put this on here because I think it's a broader topic. Location right now is key. So everyone is hoping for remote opportunities or hybrid or whatever that may be. The number one thing I can tell you that is hurting individuals at this current moment is not putting your home location on there. I totally understand if you are going for a remote job. However, a lot of clients are starting to look for remote local candidates. So by that, I mean, hey, in case leadership changes their mind and wants you to come back on site, I don't have to rehire for this position. So I do highly recommend making sure, even if it's a remote role, starting to put your location on your resume. Remote roles are also fewer and farther between, and I think it's hard to differentiate. So the biggest thing, if you take anything away from today, is making sure that you have your start location on there. Other large things around ATS, or we call them VMS systems, is really trying to beat the system and starting to use Word transferring into PDF resumes. You can all hate me for this. I'm really sorry. I love a good, beautiful InDesign resume. I do. I love them, love them, love them. I think they're appropriate if you're submitting directly to a client in terms you have one-to-one email or it's not getting filtered through a system. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. Any other version, if you're submitting into a system that's going to read your resume, other than Word and PDF, there is a very strong possibility it is not picking up your resume correctly. It's coming through as a picture. So everything that you did, all of the verbiage you put in there, all that extra time you put in to put those keywords is really being lost. It's not my favorite thing to tell designers. If you were emailing me directly, I want to see your beautiful resume. However, if you are submitting to an end client, I really recommend starting at Word, changing it to PDF, and avoid using tables. Sometimes tables also tend to kind of mix things up. A huge thing that I really want to make sure we take home today is integrating your skills description, which everyone has, right? So you put Adobe Creative Suite, Figma, Photoshop, right? Whatever you put, really integrating that into the description on your resume. One thing that we see lacking is if I have a job that I'm hiring for and I definitely need a designer who's utilized Figma and they have it in their skills on the side, I probably won't call them for it because I do need to know where exactly you've used Figma, right? And like what types of projects you use Figma and what's the level you used Figma on versus having it on the side. Because a lot of the times I could waste my time calling people who have it on the side versus having it integrated into their description. So it makes it easier on me to realize, hey, they've actually done this in a work setting. So I know that they can do this job in this opportunity, which really leads into tailoring your resume for each posting. This is a big deal. This will negate the need for cover letters. I don't think cover letters are really necessary, especially in design. Your portfolio, in my opinion, is your cover letter. And then if you're integrating and tailoring your resume, it kind of glazes over that. To be honest with you, I've been here 11 years. I've never been asked by a client for a candidate to write a cover letter for them. So I'm a no on it. Everyone can have their own opinion. I'm totally fine with that. But from a cover letter perspective, I would say I think you're okay as long as you're tailoring. Any questions on resumes before we keep going?
We do have a couple. I'll read to you. So Anne asks, do columns fall under tables, and how does using columns impact how ATS reads them?
Great question. Columns and tables are different. So you're good with columns, but when you start inserting tables, that's when it messes up. It kind of messes with certain systems. So I would say err on the side of caution. Columns, tables, totally separate. You're totally fine with columns.
Great, thank you. Two more questions at the moment. What if skill sets like photography or illustration are incorporated into design projects versus having them as standalone projects?
If they're incorporated in the full campaign, that is totally acceptable to incorporate them in the full campaign. One thing we have to think about when we think about your portfolio and campaign is, so when we're looking at the campaign, we want to see from start to finish the whole campaign, right? And we want to see in the campaign what in particular that you worked on. So it's fine if it's integrated in the full campaign. I personally would not just have a standalone thumbnail for a photo or a standalone thumbnail for something else that wouldn't be relevant. When clients are conceptualizing at this point, they want to see your thought process from start to finish and how you integrate it in. If you are a newer designer and maybe you haven't done a full campaign yet, they still want to see the thought process behind it. So even if you create a case study to talk them through how you did it, design's elevated now. It's not just about, hey, I've got this finished product for you. Like, that's awesome, right? It's the thought behind it. Even if you're not a particular UX designer, that's fine. They still want to know how you got there. Integrating that in is totally fine with like Illustrator, putting an illustration in and having photo in there and just referencing that you personally did that. I just wouldn't recommend having something that's totally standalone.
All right, thank you. Two more. Can you elaborate on campaigns? I think it's the term campaigns, and what a campaign includes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. So when I think campaign, I think I was working on a branding for a client. So for that client in particular, I did their some digital assets for them. I did new business cards, flyers, social media posts, things like that, all around one particular advertisement that's going out there. So when I think campaign, I think, hey, I did all of these things around one advertising slick that went out, and I want all of those pieces put together under one thumbnail. Again, if you had illustration in there, if you had photo in that project that you're working on, that's fine. Campaign or project can be interchangeable from that side, but I do usually hope that someone will have more than one piece for a client on their portfolio, not just like a standalone GIF or a standalone business card. We want multiple pieces within and where you excelled within those multiple pieces.
All right, hope that works. Two more now. They're coming in. Does having a two-page resume affect ATS? Or I would say any other thoughts beyond just the ATS aspect for two-page resume?
Yeah, so two-page resume is always a big topic of conversation. If you are a new designer, you are fresh out of school, one page, no questions asked. I will not negotiate on one page. Two-page resume, if you have tenure, I think it's important. You're going to need to tell people your ROIs. Even as a designer, you need to have return on investments. This is a big thing I didn't put on here. Was hoping this would come up in natural conversation, so glad it did. How have you saved that company time or money in your current role or in your previous roles? And that should be the bulk of what we're seeing on your resume. So, hey, I worked on this project for their website. It was originally slated to take us 12 months to finish. I finished it in 9, estimated saving the client about $50,000, wrapping it up 3 months sooner, right? Not every job you're going to be able to do that, but that's really what we're looking for. So if you're going into your resume and you are more tenured, 2 is fine, but it has to be good content on that too. It can't just be, I designed websites in Figma and then it's repeated every single time under every single thing, right? There has to be some girth to it to make it worthwhile to have 2. If you feel like there's not enough return on investment, you feel like you did the same thing in the last couple of roles, I would recommend cutting it down, moving it to 1 and calling it a day. But if you feel like those ROIs are out there and you really did some meaty things at those opportunities, I would definitely recommend moving it to 2.
All right. Yes. Ignacio says thank you. And then we have a two-parter here. We have Alexa says, I often hear people say, recommending, I guess, to quantify your resume, which may be what we were just talking about. Would you recommend including numbers and percentages in your resume? And Anne adds on to that, what do you recommend when someone can't speak to those numbers, when they don't have the information, since often designers don't get insight into that data?
Great question. So 100% try and quantify. I just placed a designer out in Texas and he saved a client 60% on production costs by slowly integrating this small piece of AI. It didn't do the whole design for him, but it really helped him move faster and tailor it. And to me, 60% on production costs, holy moly, that's a lot. If you can't quantify, I would elevate. If you did something faster than you needed to, I think it's appropriate to talk about that with leadership. Hey, I did this project faster. I'd love to know, how much time or money did that save? Not just for your resume, but it helps elevate you within the company because you're thinking about what's next. Even if you feel like it's a small freelance project you finished faster than you needed to, you could really quantify that too, right? So you were given 30 days to do it. Here was the cost. You did it in 17. You could make you could quantify that. So I always think people only think it's about saving money on a super large scale. It can be a smaller scale with your freelance work. One thing I love is I have a candidate who is phenomenal, and their number of edits that they need per client is so low because they really listen and can execute very well. So it doesn't just need to be huge money saving, 60% of production costs, right? It can be as little as, hey, you know what? My edit time back and forth is 2 edits, and not because I hold you to 2 edits, but because I'm just fast and I listen to what you're saying. So there's other ways to start quantifying, not just monetary value.
Thank you. And there is one more that popped up. Do I understand it right? V is asking that ROIs go into the case study, which I think by that you mean the project or the campaign, not the CV.
They should actually go on both. So that's one thing. And actually, you're kind of leading me into my biggest point here is your resume, your portfolio, and your LinkedIn is your brand. So everything needs to be aligned. So if that information is really pertinent on your portfolio, it should be on your resume, which should be on your LinkedIn. I feel like this is elementary to say, but I have to say it because I don't see this all the time. As soon as a client opens your resume, they hyperlink and they open your portfolio, which please hyperlink your portfolio. I had to correct someone this week and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we talked about that. But so they're going to click your portfolio. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to go right to your LinkedIn if they like your portfolio, and they're going to make sure everything aligns. So if you left a job off your resume, but you kept it on your LinkedIn, that's a question mark to them. So really aligning yourself and aligning the content on all 3. So are you going to put your full case study on your LinkedIn? Absolutely not. Should you have your portfolio linked on there? Of course. Should you have your ROI on the resume and the portfolio because it might be relevant to that client? 100%. So really making sure as many places you can put that as a visual is a really big win for a client because those are the first 3 clicks someone makes about you.
And from me, on that topic of the hyperlinked portfolio from the resume, how would you quantify how many clients might not move forward if it's not clickable?
You have a 2% chance of getting the job if it is not clickable. And I'm not trying to over exaggerate that. The number one thing we want to do is ease for a client. We think user experience all the time. And that's why I'm hiring designers to think about user experience, even if you are not a user experience designer, even if you're a print designer. I feel like that is the one thing that people need. I would be hesitant to move forward with someone based upon that. And I know our clients are as well. As much as we can serve it to them on a silver platter, they think that stuff should be well known within design community. So that's a really, really good question. I just want to follow up with this, making sure you're interning. If you're changing careers and you're unfortunately maybe not landing internships, I would really highly recommend volunteering for nonprofits to build out your portfolio. There are so many nonprofits right now that are struggling and they would love you to do free work for them, right? And you would love to build your portfolio. I think that to me is a really, really big deal. So just kind of starting to build that relationship. And even if you're in a full-time job and maybe you're not in the sector you want to be in, or you want to veer off and do something else, building your portfolio with either freelance or volunteering in that sector really can make a big difference as well.
Great. Well, we have a bunch of questions that were pre-submitted if you'd like me to start moving through them.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. And I'm checking the chat. One more just came in from Betty. Where do you recommend people find volunteer roles?
I think I would really, the easiest place to look, in my opinion, is actually Facebook. I'm old, so like you guys can laugh at me. But I think about all of the event pages that people post, fundraisers for whomever. Those are the best places. They don't have a budget. They don't have money, and that's okay. They're raising money for a good cause. You going out there and helping them with whatever is a big, big help. Obviously, you can go to Upwork. People need help there. I know you just jumped in Taproot. I've never heard of them, but that could be great as well. But There's other places that you can kind of just peek around and offer a logo, offer a flyer, offer anything. I know they'll be greatly appreciative. And just make sure you ask them, hey, do you mind if I add this to my portfolio in return? Just making sure you're not overstepping from that side. If you can't add it to your portfolio, obviously you can do this out of the goodness of your heart. However, I would make sure like I can add it to my portfolio if I'm doing this work.
Or at least resume, right? If they won't let you add it. Okay.
Exactly.
And catch a fire, and which is the big one, right? Is and Ignacio have mentioned. All right. I'll keep an eye on the chat. I'm looking over here. So one of our members who couldn't make it today, Joseph, said, what are you looking for from designers who've been working for 5 to 10 years and are looking to move into a managerial or directorial role?
That is a really great question. One thing we always think about is you should be doing the job before you have the job. So what I look for in someone who's looking to move to the next level, and what we see a lot internally when people are looking to promote, is what have you taken on outside of your normal job responsibilities? How have you elevated your skill set? What new tools and responsibilities have you brought into the group to help operational efficiency? Because when we move up to the next level, we think about operational efficiency, team building, mentoring, and financials, right? So what in those 4 sectors have you started elevating your skill set within, or have you started asking more questions? So just like when we talked about the ROIs, have I inserted myself and started asking questions around this to start gaining an understanding and a skill set within? Have I assisted with operational efficiencies? And really the list goes on from there. And then taking that information and adding it to your resume, and really indicating to whomever you're applying to, hey, I'm a senior designer here. I'm on the cusp of an art director role. My next step naturally is an art director role, or my next step is a creative director role. One thing I would mention, and I think this happens more so in design than other skills, is understanding the size of the company that you're applying to. A senior designer role might not be equivalent to a senior designer role at another company, based upon the team structure, the team size, org chart, all of it. So really, before you even apply, just because you're applying to a senior designer or an art director role, you might still only be qualified for the senior designer role based upon the company org chart and structure. So I really would recommend too, as we're talking about growing your career and movement, I see that a lot when people are like, hey, I'm totally qualified for this creative director role. Unfortunately, this creative director role manages a team of 17, and you were a singular creative director and you have unfortunately not managed anyone in your last role. So those are things that we also think about when we look at opportunities. So making sure you put all of that information in your resume, you're doing your research before you apply, and as you're starting to grow your career.
Excellent. All right. So we have one more from Joseph, and then I'll jump back into the chat. Joseph says, is a portfolio still important for hiring into these roles? He's still talking about his previous question. And he says he's had mixed responses when he's asked the question, but the overarching consensus seems to be that it is important only in showing the candidate's ability to lead people and projects, and the impact that those projects have had for their clients versus demonstrating the candidate's design skills.
I totally agree with that. I think another thing we all have to take into consideration too is aesthetics, right? If you're going to be leading that group and looking through it, how involved were you in the process? How involved were you in the projects? They need to see that portfolio. Also, they want to look at your design eye. It doesn't matter what part of the interview process that you're in. I hire executive creative directors places all the time, and a lot of things that they look at is their portfolio. They need to see how they design. They need to see their thought process, their concepting work. One thing I would recommend is really adding your concepting thought process to that as well, not just the advertisement or the case study or whatever, and making sure you have that in there, because that's really what that client is looking for at that next level.
Excellent. Thank you. A couple from the chat. We have Gabby asking, what does building a relationship with a recruiter entail, and how does it look?
That is a really great question. I recommend finding a local recruiter in your area that specializes in marketing creative, and reaching out to them. even if you are not looking today, that's okay. Or you are looking, send them your resume, send them your portfolio, and just say, hey, I might be on the market in the next couple of years or in the next couple of months. Keep an eye out. When we see an aesthetic that we like, we will remember it. And we will go to some of our clients and say, hey, I saw something that made me think of you. And that to me is really important. And then even if you land an opportunity elsewhere, you go somewhere else, that's fine. Next time you're looking again, reach back out to that recruiter. Or if you end up in hiring capacity, reach out to that recruiter to help you hire for them, right? It really comes full circle all the time. My best clients are candidates that I've placed. And they will help you at any point in your career, giving you advice, telling you what's out there in the market. That stuff is really important right now. So constant communication, finding someone you like and really being a little dedicated to them goes a long way.
Yeah, I would say that I would imagine that people are worried about being too pushy.
That's a really great question, to be too pushy. Trust me, we're not afraid to tell you, like, hey, I got nothing for you, but here's what I'm seeing out there in the market. You're never too pushy. I love a good relationship. I love when people stay with me a long time. But one thing you can't be disappointed with is if they don't end up placing you. Unfortunately, we don't place everyone that we chat with, whether the season's not right for your skill set or you find something on your own. But staying with them for a long period of time, trust me, we remember everyone. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's probably comforting for people to realize.
Yeah.
Anne asks, how much are years of experience weighted against quality of those years? For example, if somebody's portfolio is strong or their job responsibilities match up to the listing, but they don't meet the stated number of years asked, how would that work out?
I am a believer in still applying to that job. If you feel as though everything else aligns and you say it says 5 years, you're at 2 or 3, please apply. 9 times out of 10, human resources went to the creative director and asked them all of the qualifications, and they threw it in the job description. And we love our human resources partners. We really do. But sometimes it feels definitive in the job description, but it's maybe not. So I would say take the chance, apply. If you're telling me they need 15 years of experience, you have 3 to 4, I would say let's hold off, right? But if we're within a reasonable number, I always recommend taking the chance, especially if you feel like you align.
All right, thank you. We have a bunch more. I'm hearing my own echo. Ignacio says, I'm interested in a junior desktop document specialist role, specifically for Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. What would I need to share with you and your team to be considered for this type of role? And can you also please share what skill set your clients are expecting?
So typically for our opportunities, we only place designers within the Adobe Creative Suite. So I personally would not be the best resource from that perspective. But if you're looking for more of a document specialist, I do have other teammates who work on document specialist opportunities. I unfortunately am not an expert within those sectors. My expertise will only lie within really the Adobe Creative Suite to help you out. But I have other colleagues elsewhere that I can always refer to within Robert Half.
Thank you. And along that line, we talked in our initial meeting, we talked about some people don't use Adobe and are staying away from Adobe. Can you give your feedback on that?
Yes. I think the only way to design here is Adobe. Everyone can have opinions. They've seen job postings with something else or anything like that. That's well and good. But from what I'm seeing out there in the market, I have only placed graphic designers with Adobe. If you want to be in marketing and utilize Canva, that's great. That's totally fine. But true designers just cannot be replaced within the Adobe Creative Suite. That's kind of where we're definitely going to see the most success. Again, there are always outliers. I hear that. I'm fine with that. I see that. But I would say 95% is going to have the Adobe Creative Suite.
And I would imagine Figma, in addition to that, is going to be part of it.
Yep, 100%.
almost purchased by Adobe, but it fell apart. And there's something else that you said. I see the additional chats coming, but I didn't want to miss this. You told me there's I guess a fairly recent issue that's coming up via Zoom itself in their AI companion that's causing a lot of issues. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I think AI is definitely not going to be taking us over. So I will, as I led into the conversation, I am not a designer. I took all of my notes from today and I threw it in Copilot, right? Copilot is not going to change it. Copilot did not design it for me, but it threw it into a nice presentation and I could fix things up. But there's a big things out there with AI. So I just want to make sure I make this statement again. AI is not replacing us as designers, period. However, one thing people are looking for when hiring is, have you implemented any type of AI technique to save you time or money? So when I talked about the designer who saved that production 60%, he was given a design specs for this product and was able to leverage AI, including his own design, to build out an entire photo shoot for this client to use on this new campaign line. So one big thing that we are looking for and people who are getting placed faster is people who are taking slight implementations within AI and leveraging it and utilizing it towards their work. So it's pretty interesting on what we're seeing out there.
That's helpful. Well, I was actually talking about when you said the AI companion in a Zoom in an interview.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all helpful.
No, it's okay. So when people are interviewing right now, sometimes you might have an AI companion. I don't see anyone has it here because you can actually see it on Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and it takes notes on the call. Make sure if you do have that, please turn it off because you can see it, I can see it, and my client can see it. We've had it a couple of times. It's great because you get the notes after. We all get the notes after, but clients are really taken back and surprised by it. So if you do have any AI bots or anything taking notes for you on your computer, especially I always see a lot with recent grads, just make sure before you jump into that interview, you have that turned off or you keep it on your phone on the side. Just make sure it's not on that screen.
Got it. All right. Thank you. I just want to make sure we didn't miss that. Josh asks, what are your thoughts on using aliases or studio names for personal branding portfolios?
Great question. I am not a fan of it. I want to know you. Unless you're putting yourself out there as your own freelance business, which is completely separate than being hired by an agency or graphic or a corporate company as a graphic designer, right? You're doing it for your own freelance business. That's well and good, totally fine. But if you're going in for a client, I want you to be branded and I want to know about you in particular because as you grow your career, we want to know your name and think about you every time we think about a certain design.
Great. More questions coming in. Anne says, I think sometimes quality of work and types of projects in the portfolio feels limited by the work we're actually able to do in any given role. Are concept or passion projects weighted less heavily or not valued? And what can candidates do when they're not well positioned to do the best design work in their actual role?
So definitely a loaded question here. So for the first part about passion projects and that piece, it really depends on how many years of experience you have, how heavily they're weighted. If you are newer in your career, first 3 to 5 years, passion projects, you might still have some college projects on there, acceptable. They are going to be weighted equally. As you progress in your career, 7 to 10 years, unfortunately, they're really going to care about the work that you did in the office, in a professional work setting. How were you able to kind of maneuver there? A way to get around it, if you're not thrilled about what you're working on right now, would be to pick up freelance. So I think passion projects and like concept projects are completely separate, in my opinion, than freelance. Freelance is actual work. I would really start trying to pick up freelance within the industry or within the design that you want to be doing. That won't be weighted similarly because they're really solidified projects at that point. Hopefully that helped, Dan.
I'm sure it did. Betty asks, what is your recommendation for designers to stand out from the competition in application pools? Right now, the job market is horrible and extremely competitive. And in New York City, I can't tell you the number of times I see 500 plus applicants in a job that's posted.
Betty, if you can come off mute, I'd love to know, did you see that? Are you seeing it on LinkedIn? 500 applicants?
Yes, I am seeing it on LinkedIn and other job boards as well. There's like so many applicants within like an hour. I've even seen 1,000 or 2,000 applicants, and I'm like, oh my God, how do I
Yeah.
even stand out? And actually, I've seen this also from recruiters themselves posting on LinkedIn saying, we have so many applicants. How the hell do we get through this? And it's actually, I'm noticing like an actual industry-wide problem where there's so many applicants and not enough jobs to place them. And that's why I'm wondering, what can designers do to actually stand out, because it's so hard and really competitive right now.
Awesome. So I'm so glad you asked this question, because there's a couple things that you could do. So I want to lead with this, especially on LinkedIn. I post jobs on LinkedIn all the time. When I post a job, I might get 1,000 applications. Out of those 1,000, most of them are doing a quick apply and are absolutely not reading my job posting. I'm saying to you, it is on site in Philadelphia. It is, I need this type of design skill. I need this type of industry. 95% are not reading any of it. The 5% who are actually getting a call. So if you feel as though you are genuinely qualified for a post, for a job, I highly, highly, highly recommend to you, please still apply. There are filters in which we can use to break down who is actually qualified for that job. I mean, I'm telling you, I post a job in Philadelphia, I get 1,000 applies, and 95% of them sit somewhere in the country. And I'm like, has to be in Philadelphia, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing I would do, and not a lot of designers are doing this, take the extra step to go onto that company's website and apply directly. So the majority of the time, their LinkedIn applications do not connect with their company website. Fortunately, Robert Half is incredible. It does. I can work everything the same. But I would say that is not the case for 90 companies that are out there. They have to use them separately. So when somebody creates their internal application system, it's easier for them to use. And most of the time, people don't take those extra steps to apply to them directly. So I highly, highly recommend taking the extra time, applying to them correctly or directly, and then they can properly filter their system and they look there faster. I always look at my internal system first before I even jump to LinkedIn, because of exactly what you said. I am so overwhelmed by applicants, and a good amount of them, unfortunately, are not qualified for the job that I'm currently sourcing for. So I think a couple things. One, still apply. Two, go directly to their website. And three, sometimes even companies, when on LinkedIn, they'll show you who the hiring manager is. You can always send them a message directly as well, letting them know your interest level. So I think those three things, and taking those extra steps, getting away from direct applies, makes a really big difference.
That's great, because that's such a pressing issue. And I do hear negative things about easy apply. And Gabby actually adds to that and says that she believes, and I've heard this recently too, that when it says the number of applicants, quote unquote applicants, that it could just be people who clicked it once and didn't follow through the process. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes too, there's a way, if the client opens the job wrong on LinkedIn, it can carry applicants from an old job posting as well. So it could be an error within LinkedIn. Everyone does things differently. So I just recommend, if you're qualified, apply. You could get the call.
Right. LinkedIn wants to make their numbers look good, but that doesn't work well for everybody else who's applying. Annie and Ignacio just say thank you for answering the question so thoroughly. We're not done yet, but thank you for saying that, both of you. Alexis says, I have been debating about creating a mock marketing campaign around a character I created to build portfolio work like business cards, flyers, brochures, etc. Would something like that be advisable in a portfolio, or should I instead focus on the volunteer work that you mentioned? And thank you for your wonderful answers, by the way.
Well, Alexis, I think there's twofold. I think my first instinct is tell you to go do volunteer work. It's a real company. It's real clients. It's giving you real life experience that you can refer back to and add to your resume. I love that you want to create your own campaign, and I think that is cool too, but can't add that to your resume. The volunteer work, you get the resume and you get the portfolio, and that is the game changer there. So when you add freelance to your resume, now you can add that client there. Your end client doesn't know whether or not you were paid when you're interviewing for a job. So highly, highly recommend volunteer first, then a secondary personal campaign.
All right, thank you. Josh says, what effect does social media have on the hiring process?
Josh, do you want to give me a little bit more color there? Because there's a couple ways we can go with this, if you can.
My earlier question was about websites and freelance branding. So, is it just a negative thing? I mean, you're looking to validate that the person's real, but is it only negative that social media can play out?
Great question. Before most people hire, they're going to check your socials. So I recommend just being clean across the board. No matter what you do, just be aware that you are searchable in every way, shape, or form. And know that going into a hiring process. So obviously resume, LinkedIn, portfolio, you're going to see right away. We're going to click on that. We're going to click through it. But as you get deeper into the hiring process, I'm probably going to know more about you, right? I'm going to try and Google you. What's the first thing that comes up on Google? I actually have a cousin who has the exact same name as me. We married into the same family. So we are both Samantha Senni, and she laughs when she Googles herself. She can't find herself. She only can find me. So I think about that a lot when I think about candidates, because I want to Google you, right? Like I want to make sure across all you say who you say you are, who you say you are. So no matter what you put anywhere, I would always be conscientious of what is coming up. That's all.
All right, Scott has raised his hand, which I think he means he wants to speak a question. Go ahead, Scott, but I will say, Bailey, I saw your question, so we can jump into that next.
Yeah, I don't mind popping on mic. Hi. We kind of drifted past this, so I'm going to topic jump backward a little bit. Portfolio websites. I was curious what you're feeling like from a specific, like when you go or you send a client to a portfolio website, what will stop them? Right? Like what mistakes in organization or an actual like user experience? Like if I have to do this or I can't find this easily or I have to do X more than once, I'm going to be done with your website.
Great question. I want to click twice to get to your portfolio or to get to your actual work. So I'm totally fine with entering a screen and you having something cool and innovative. I have one awesome freelancer I work with. Hers is like this really innovative cheeseburger. It sounds weird. It's not. It's really cool. But I click once and I can get to her work. I click again and I can get to a full campaign. Anything past that usually is, okay, why am I clicking so much? And when I think about usability, another weird one that stops people in their tracks is when you have to scroll a different way. I know that sounds really bizarre, but the people who see these most of the time first, especially when we're talking about direct hire design, are human resources. As much as we hope that they're trained in hiring design, if they're struggling to get through it, no matter how creative it is and how awesome it is that you and I know it is, they might still be struggling. So we have to also think about them before they even get to the hiring manager. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. I recently went back and like turned my the portfolio page on my website into my homepage as like just like a little UX tweak. Like is that like a best practice or just kind of you'll take that second click as long as the first page is inviting and it's easy to see?
Yeah, as long as it's inviting. But I to be honest, the less clicks I have to do and the faster I can like you, the better. I want to like you fast, and usually I can like you fast on when I can see your work first.
Got it. Thanks.
I would say there's probably never any kind of downside to going straight to the work. Mm-hmm. Fair enough? Okay.
Never.
Jumping back to the question about applications, high numbers of applications, Bailey says, building on this, the idea of all those applicants, do you believe it can still be beneficial to apply to jobs that seem to have thousands of applicants?
Yes, please apply. If it's 2 weeks out, please apply. Always apply. If you are qualified for the role, I am telling you, you will get a call. These roles right now are so specialized that people are hiring for that it does not hurt to put in an application, especially if you feel as though you're qualified. We look every single day at old postings. Something else that we also do is we save all of our applications. So if you are not qualified for the role that you applied for, there could be a chance that you are qualified for a different role that someone is working on. I would say obviously apply to the roles that are appropriate. However, if you don't get picked, there is a shot they're going to save your information for something else that they might have down the road.
Excellent. Sam, I know it's Friday afternoon and we're getting close to 4. Do you want to give me a time? Because I still have a bunch more questions that were initially submitted. Do you want to give me a time and we could
I'm
Just
good
up.
till 4:30.
Oh, okay. Wow, we could probably fill that time then. All right, we're jumping back to the initial questions. How much time do you spend on each portfolio? I would ask for also how much. The second part of the question is how much time do you think, or do you get the feeling that clients spend on the portfolio?
You have about 6 seconds to capture someone's attention on a resume or a portfolio before we move on. Once I get into it, I'm going to spend time, at least 5+ minutes going through it if I like it in those first 6 seconds. If something is a little bit outlandish to me or it turns me off, I'm going to click out almost immediately. So you really have to move pretty quickly within those clicks to get someone's attention.
I would add that 5 minutes is a long time. If you can have somebody going for 5 minutes, it might feel like that might sound like a low number, but if you were to time 5 minutes looking through anything online, that's a lot these days.
Wow.
How important is it to show only real world work? We did touch on this. Are concepts or student projects okay? You said that as you move forward in time in your career, that's less okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got to start pulling those student projects off a little bit later down the road.
Yep. Is there any such thing as too much variety in a portfolio?
Yes. 100%. There can be too much variety. And variety can mean two things. When I hire designers for a specific design opportunity, sometimes you can be too much of a jack of all trades, master of none. So you want to be as concise as possible within your portfolio and what you're really good at. If you are a fantastic designer when it comes to print, some digital assets, social media, that is great. Maybe your motion work isn't as strong, but you're thinking like, should I add my variety and add some motion work on there? I would probably say, let's hold off on that for the time being, unless it's appropriate for an individual client that you're submitting for that's asking for all of those things. So I'd really try and say as concise as possible to your absolute strengths, because that's what people want to hire you for, is your strengths, not your variety.
Great. We have another one. I see all kinds of opinions on this. Do hiring managers really care about case studies and process work? Yeah, you see all kinds of different things. You also see different opinions on what is a case study. Some people's portfolio really, I would say, is a case study. It has process work. It has the star format, and others might have a more stripped down portfolio has less information, and they might have a separate section on their website where they have one or two case studies.
So this is a really good question. If you are a UX designer, so let me start from this side. I know we're talking about graphic design, but I think if you are a UX designer, you without a doubt need full explanations and case studies, period. If you are moving into a leadership role, like we talked about before, you also need full case studies. What did you do? How did you contribute? What is your ROI from that perspective? If you are a traditional designer, but you're working on a campaign, especially if you've collaborated with other people on that campaign, you should indicate what your role was within. If you did the campaign start to finish, that is fantastic, but I would still put descriptions on there. What was it used for? What did you use to build it? Different pieces like that, especially, I have to say this, if you're using Figma, put it everywhere. People want Figma right now more than anything. Make sure you indicated built this in Figma, right? Have that kind of stuff on there and giving that little bit of explanation. I can't tell you how many times, I submit a candidate to a client, right? They have Figma, have it all over their resume, and they go, do they have Figma experience? I'm like, yes, they have Figma. So anywhere you can put those explanations is definitely helpful.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I sometimes say for some jobs, it appears that a check mark needs to be checked, right? Like, have you done video work? And in fact, I don't think that's even come up, but in typical design roles, how important is it to have experience editing videos?
In a traditional design role, it is not important. It depends on the size of the shop, and it depends on what you're going for. If that is something that's in your skill set, that's phenomenal. Obviously, if they ask for it, you can talk about it. But when I'm looking at a traditional designer, video is not something that I need a check mark on to make sure that you're qualified for a job.
Yeah, got it. Next question. Should I avoid certain types of projects? And the examples were album covers, T-shirts, concert posters, etc.
Great question. I typically would avoid those if they're personal projects. Obviously, if you did them for an end client, completely different story. But album covers, t-shirts, things like that just don't tend to stand out to a client. We need to think, if you're going for a corporate client or even agency client, because a lot of their end clients are corporate, right? We need to be thinking about how they think. Did you look at any of the portfolios, designers who work for those companies, and include any of those pieces on your portfolio, right? So do they have album covers? They have t-shirts. What do they have on theirs that you've done that you should include, because they're evidently attracted to that type of design and that type of work? So taking that extra step, doing that extra homework. So if those designers have it on there, have at it. Great, no problem. Traditionally, would I recommend it? Probably not. However, always do your research, look at the design, look at the aesthetic that they're going for, and then tailor your portfolio to what they target.
Got it. Now, this actually isn't a question, but we touched on it, I think, in our initial talk. But when somebody is under NDA, how do you recommend that they handle that in their portfolio if they can't show what they've worked on for their main role, their current role, or past roles?
I really recommend password protecting, or you can, if you cannot even do that, you can screen share on the interview with that client if it is relevant to what you're going for. I'm 100% need to put this disclaimer out there. Do not break your NDA. Do not break any of that. I just want to be very clear. I do not recommend that, but there are ways to password protect and hide that information and share it separately. It also can be shared potentially in a direct PDF if required to land the opportunity. But again, do not break your NDA, read your paperwork, read everything before you kind of take those next steps. But those are avenues I've seen people take to make sure that they can showcase some of that work.
All right. Josh says, do you recommend including a video of yourself on your portfolio website? I would add your opinions on resumes, photos on resumes.
Yes. So both I would actually not recommend. We want people to look at your work. We want people to look at your history. We want people to look at all of that. Whomever's on the other side of reading that resume is human. You never know what they're going to think of you. They have brown hair, you have blonde hair, and maybe they don't like blonde hair that day, right? We never want them to think anything other about you than your work. So I would really recommend just sticking to the guts of your resume or portfolio and just leaving the resumes out. We went through that big selfie craze when selfies came out. And I don't know if anyone remembers in I guess this was when I was recruiting in 2017, 2018, 2019. Everyone who was graduating had a selfie on their resume. And I was like, please take it off your resume, right? I think we're in the same boat now. We just want to think about you, your work, what you have to offer, rather than looking at you visually. We can check out your LinkedIn, make them take those next steps if they want to see what you look like.
Yeah. And I would add that in other countries or other regions, it is more common, but you did state up front, we're primarily talking about United States here.
Correct.
Got it. What is the ideal number of projects for a junior designer to show?
Great question. So anything, I mentioned 3 because that's like an indicator of a boot camp number, over 3. So I usually say 4 to 6 for a junior designer is totally appropriate. Again, like I mentioned before, we want less is more in a certain sense, where we don't want them to be turned off by anything that you're putting out there. So if you put too many pieces, they see one they don't like, they're going to start moving on. So I usually say max yourself out at 7 and you should be good, but definitely over 4.
Yeah. And those are big, long, full projects or campaigns, right?
Agreed.
Some of these we've covered. So somebody asked about, is it okay to combine freelance promotion and job seeking on the same website? I think that was a pretty direct no, right? Mm-hmm. Does someone need to specialize in one type of design to get hired?
Yes, I think you do. I think there's a world out there for everyone. I know clients ask for combinations. I'm not blind to that, but I do think you do need to specialize. You got to be really good at what you do. And sometimes when you try to do everything, you might not be really good at everything. So I always say, dive in, find what you're good at, be really, really good at it, find your niche within a team and start growing it that way.
Okay. Somebody says, is a flashy animated website or a themed website better than a clean and simple one?
this is total personal preference. Personal preference for me, clean, clean, clean. I love a good flashy one every once in a while, but you have to be the person who owns that, right? And you have to know that your flashy website might not be appropriate for every client that's out there. So a clean one pretty much can go to any client, right? I'm not going to be concerned about sending. If you have a flashy website, there could be certain corporate clients that might not be attracted to that. So know your audience, know who you're going for, and be comfortable with that decision that you're going to make.
All right. Somebody says, now we're getting more into actual like interviewing, applying. If you don't have agency experience, are you at a big disadvantage? Maybe they mean for going for agency roles, I would imagine.
Got it. If you are fresh out of school and you don't have agency experience, totally fine. You don't have any experience, right? So you can apply and do whatever you want to do. As you grow your career and you're really in it, the pace of an agency is different than the pace of corporate. I have seen people transfer over or transition because some corporate in-houses genuinely do act like agencies, and they're actually former agency folk that came over and did it in-house, and it runs at the pace of an agency. So I have seen certain transitions. Typically, the majority of my agency clients, if I'm hiring a mid-level or higher, they need agency experience. You know the pace. There's a learning curve they don't have to teach. But if you are in your first couple of years right out of school, I haven't seen that as a hurdle.
That's great. Jeremy, who is in the meetings, sent this one in. He said, when we list our skills on the resume, now that I've been a creative manager, should I list things like problem solving and budget management and that sort of thing and remove some of the others like Photoshop, Illustrator, and Figma?
I would take those higher level skills now and integrate them into your descriptions. To be honest, I like strongly am against the skills tab because I think you can list everything in the skills tab and your real skills are integrated into how you describe your work. So if you're a problem solver, hey, what problem did you solve, right? Like what creative concept did you create? So when we think about those hot buttons for leadership, when we think about those hot buttons for growing your career, as long as it's solidified with an example, put that in your description. Nix the skills area. We don't really need that anymore. Anyone can write, they're bilingual in English and Spanish, but they can't write Spanish. They can speak Spanish, right? But it's not they haven't used it in a professional setting. So is that skill is applicable, right? So those are things we kind of think about as we want to kind of almost take that away and push it all into your descriptions. So yes, I agree, creative problem solver, but give me an example of you doing creative problem solving rather than just listing it out on the skill side. That's what's going to be the game changer, and that's what's going to elevate your resume versus everyone else.
All right. Beverly, we did touch on this, but as Beverly asks, as a fresh grad, what can you do to get yourself noticed by recruiters?
I would say just message them directly. Sometimes we do get inundated with a lot of resumes for skill sets or opportunities we're not hiring for directly. Not every day am I hiring an entry-level graphic designer. I might get that a different day. So my eyes are focused on a different skill set. So just message them, ask them to keep you in mind, ask to set up a call. That really does make a difference and go a long way.
Okay. Josh says, what kind of URLs are most appropriate for portfolio sites? Are subdomains okay, such as I would say platform subdomains like .cargo.com, .myportfolio.com is the Adobe one, and a separate question, if using a custom domain, is .com considered the best?
.com is considered the best. I haven't really seen anything out there. Otherwise, I would stick with .com, make it clean. I would say we want to be innovative in certain areas, but there are other things that we should just stick to traditional if we're going towards traditional clients. And just remaining with .com is always the easiest to go.
And if somebody could only go with, all right, so if somebody could only go with .cargo, .myportfolio, I'm kind of interpreting this one, but would that have a negative impact on them potentially?
I don't think it would have a negative impact on them if that's all you can do. But again, I would really make the efforts to just say .com, being as clean as possible. Again, some of the clients that we're trying to get hired for, when I think graphic design, they're traditional, their end clients are traditional. We want to remain kind of on the same level as them. But I want to still revert back to look at the designers who work at the company you're applying for. What do they have? What are they doing? That also can make a big difference too. If you have a dream company, what do their portfolios look like? What do their URLs look like? Really try and assimilate to what they're doing always does make a big difference as well.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I would say I bought a domain for $8 from Namecheap once, and I think that might have covered 3 years. So it can really be looked. It's a specific recommendation for Namecheap. Betty asks, if I use .website, is that bad?
I've never seen someone use it. So I don't, it's a very specific question. I've never seen someone use it. So I can't give you an overall opinion, like they haven't gotten hired. But I've never seen it out there. So I probably would, again, stick to more traditional.
Okay. How far back currently do hiring managers want to see on your resume? And they point out that going back too far might be an age indicator.
Absolutely love this question. 10 years is the max that should go on your resume. And it's not an age indication question. It's a technology indication question. So is your technology, what relevant technology have you used in the last 10 years? I think I work with a designer who I absolutely love, but we've worked with each other for a really long time. And initially her first project with me, she had to use a little Quark press. It was what it was, right? At that time, like that was the technology. But now we're not even talking about that. That's not a relevant technology any longer. We want to see what technologies you've used in the last 10 years. I would even go as far to really highlighting the last 5 years. COVID happened and there was a very large digital transformation that happened in the last 5 years. That 5 years, I think, is even more important than the whole last 10 altogether. So those are the things we can think about. I don't really think of it as ageism. I think of it as, hey, how is technology relevant? What are you doing to upskill yourself over the last decade to make sure you are in competition with other designers that are out there today?
Yeah, that's an important one. That comes up a lot. Alexis says, do you have any advice for someone like me that is lost in their career? I have too varied a background, 3D modeling, graphic design, video editing, and don't know how to move forward to secure a stable job, especially if I need to specialize in one of those skills.
I'm trying to look through and see the list that you had. 3D modeling, graphic design, and video editing, and don't know how to move forward to secure a stable job, especially if I need to specialize in one. If you feel as though you are proficient in all three, what I recommend is creating 3 separate resumes, 3 separate portfolios. Because when a client jumps on and sees video, 3D modeling, and graphic design, it's a lot to see in one shot. So I would create 3 separate resumes, 3 separate portfolios. If your LinkedIn doesn't align at that point, it is what it is, right? But if you did all 3 of those at every job, obviously you can list, like, I worked at ABC company. Here's flourish what you did in graphic design, really put it on there, right? And then say, also was responsible for 3D modeling and video editing. But if you feel as though you're appropriately proportionate within all 3, feel free to create 3 separate and then use that appropriate resume to apply for that appropriate job. But I would also recommend you need 3 separate portfolios for each, or just specifically a Vimeo reel for your video work, to kind of get it through. I know it's hard to specialize when you've been thrown into a job that you've had to do so many different things, but I think there's other ways to define yourself, and it really compartmentalizing that will make a big difference.
Great advice. Somebody says, I think this was Jeremy as well. Is it acceptable to ask the hiring manager what it was about your resume that made them call you or pick you or choose you?
That is a totally appropriate question. I would take it one step further and ask if it was your resume or your portfolio that made them choose you. I think that's a really great question. And especially when we talk about how many thousands of resumes that they saw, it can help you further you in your next application process if they saw something in particular. That's nice to hear.
Is it a red flag to list tools that you've used only once or twice? I would say, like, how do you, if you know, sometimes there's an excellence and there's a competency and there's like basic skills. How do you recommend calling that out in a resume?
Yeah. So again, when we talk about integrating, integrate what you're good at. I do love a good, I know I said, I don't like skills on the resume, but when people do this, I actually don't hate it. When they have that little barometer and they write all of the skills that they're good at, and then they show you like excellent, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 3 out of 10, that's totally fine. If you only used a tool one time in a professional setting and you are established in your career and you will need help with it, when you go to your next opportunity, absolutely do not list it. If you feel as though you use it one time on a really good project, you crushed it, you could do it again, you can list it, but be prepared to answer questions about it in an interview if it does arise or come up. I wouldn't, if I only used it once, I wouldn't integrate that into my description. I would keep it on the side, but everyone kind of has a call from that side.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. Usually the advice is not to put the experience, or actually it's not experience, it's represented as the skill level, and the challenge is somebody's essentially assessing themselves.
Yeah.
But maybe, we got a couple.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, you're right. I think it's hard too. How do you assess yourself with it versus how a client would assess? So you just need to think in their shoes. What questions are they going to ask me? Do I know all the questions that they're going to ask? Because I don't want this one thing that I shouldn't have put in my resume eliminate me.
Yeah. Betty says, jumping off your specializing reply, do you recommend having a niche, especially with permanent roles or freelance?
I think that's a loaded question, right? So if I am a digital designer and I can design a full campaign, I think that's great, right? So when I say a niche, I mean, I think it's really difficult to be very good at photo, video, design, web design, UX, any type of motion. I think it's very difficult to be good at all of those things at the same time. You could be really good at different points in your career at certain things, right? Because that's what you were put in. But I think really looking at yourself and doing some self-reflection on what you're great at it's hard. But the market out there right now with hiring is a specialized market. They want specialized talent to do this work because it's very tough to find, one, specialized talent, and two, some of the budgets are really tight within design. So when they want someone, they want something very specific. They want someone good, competent, who can come in and do it fast. They don't want someone who's done everything to be hopefully good at it, right? They need to know you're going to come in, knock it out of the park, and call it a day, even if you're not 30 years of experience doing it. So it doesn't matter whether it's permanent or freelance. You are a firefighter. You need to come in. You need to execute. So that specialization does really make a big difference. Hopefully that helps, Benny.
Do you also recommend niching down in a specific industry? Like, let's say you want to work in healthcare. Recommend like niching down that way too, or just your skill? Yeah, I do agree. Like, you can't really truly be good at like 5,000 things that's too hard. I agree.
I'm so sorry, Betty. You are breaking up on me a little bit. I don't know, Steve, if you heard that a little bit better than I did.
I thought I heard healthcare in there.
Is that the train? I'm so sorry. Let me repeat my question again.
No, go ahead. Yeah, you're much clearer now.
So sorry about that. I was asking, do you recommend also niching down in industry itself? Like, let's say instead of working in a wide range of industries, you choose, let's say, one or two. Like, let's say you want to niche down, like I want to, in healthcare and nonprofits. Do you recommend doing that as well?
Great question. So I think there's pros and cons to this. So the pros are, and when I think about healthcare, especially in the greater Philadelphia area, yes, you can get hired in healthcare quickly. But you have to think about, okay, if healthcare takes a turn or makes a change, like we think during COVID-19, there was a lot of changes and turmoil happening, funding was changing, then you've really kind of pigeonholed yourself in this sector. So I think you can have variety in the types of companies you worked for within reason. So when I think healthcare, I also think it's applicable to any other client who has really tough regulations within healthcare, right? Healthcare and pharma are different. So pharma has even tougher regulations. But I would think whatever applicable into healthcare could have very similar regulations. I always think of financial. So when you're in financial, sometimes people in financial and healthcare can move back and forth because you understand like the wait time and the process for it. But financial has its own layer of different varieties of financial. Financial and insurance are different, right? But you can sometimes jump within financial a little bit easier between finance, insurance, and things like that. But you have to be a person who can really understand regulations and work in highly regulated industries, because the content and the type of end client tends to be similar. So one thing you could also think about, Betty, is maybe not as much the client and the regulation. Also think about, are you doing B2B work or are you doing B2C work?
That way.
That's another avenue you can take with this is majority of my work B2C and I'm going to apply to a B2B SaaS company, right? That doesn't equate, right? That's a whole nother layer you have to think about when you think about someone's work. So most of my work e-commerce and I'm going to apply to a healthcare client, right? Who doesn't have a direct client facing side. So that would be almost a better avenue to think about it than, hey, do I need to stay within those industries? It's who's my end client? How am I reaching them? That makes a big difference.
Okay, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, that definitely does help, I guess, with reaching out. Do you want to be B2C or B2B?
All right. Thanks, Betty. We actually might make it through this. So we covered cover letters. Sam's feeling is if you customize your resume enough for each job, then it essentially is acting as a cover letter. Another question was, how important is it to tailor a resume to each job posting? You'd say very important, right? Or critical, maybe? I don't want
Definitely
to put
critical.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely critical. You got to tailor. You got to beat everyone else out. The
Yeah.
more care you take in, the better chances you have on landing.
Yeah, we talked about 2-page resumes versus one. We talked about skills bars or progress bars on resumes. What are red flags that you commonly see on design resumes?
A lot of the big red flags we touched on. Pictures, red flag, take it off. I will politely tell you to take it off. So politely take it off. Not linking your portfolio. If you're adding your LinkedIn, not linking your LinkedIn. And then the last big one is not putting a description because you feel like the design speaks for itself. I love design. That's obviously why I've been in this industry so long. And I love looking at it and being intrigued by portfolios and things like that. But I need to know about what you did at the company. So limited information because we're so focused on design on the resume definitely is a red flag to me, because then I don't know what you did or where you did it. And I'm not going to follow up because I'm going to find somebody else who's right next to you who described that for me. So I think those are the big things I would really think about as you're prospecting and looking through your resume.
All right. We did talk about what junior designers can do to stand out. We talked about volunteer work. How important is volunteer or freelance work for someone trying to get their first full-time role? Is it okay to include self-generated projects? We did talk about it, but the second part of the question was, how do hiring managers view those?
It depends on your tenure, I think, on the view. If you're growing in your career and you're fresh out of school, they're a little bit more viewed as appropriate versus as you progress in your career, it really should be your work.
Yep. How important are internships and what kind of intern experience helps designers the most?
I cannot scream about internships enough. Intern everywhere and anywhere. Remote, on-site, all of it, get out and intern as much as humanly possible. Start your freshman year. It is never too early to intern. Any type of internship helps. Not just when you think about hard skills, but we think about soft skills. You just learned to work in an office setting. You just learned how to, I know it sounds silly, use Microsoft Teams, use Outlook. You learned how to properly communicate with people who could be your superiors. So when I think internships, no internship is a bad internship because we want to know that you, one, took that extra effort to do it in addition to your schoolwork, and two, you're starting to learn office culture and office habits that other people may not have coming into their first day of work outside of graduating.
All right, great. How do hiring managers verify or assess skill level during the interview process?
There's a variety of ways that they can do it. And a lot of it comes from your thought process. And they'll talk you through some of your projects. And they really want you to explain your thought process and the techniques that you use. They, because the market, there are a lot of candidates on the market, most of the time they know you know how to do the job when you're walking into the door. But they are going to ask you some trickier questions to evaluate that. So you should be prepared to not only talk through your process, but They might even throw in a curveball like, okay, that's great. You were working on this, but this URL broke, or somebody came in and changed your project and did X, Y, and Z. What would you do? So be prepared for those scenario-based questions, especially when it comes to the work that you're doing.
Okay, just a couple more actually. What is a good example of how to answer what is your greatest weakness?
Everyone always says turn it, which I agree with. There is actually total drop. Follow Robert Half on social media, specifically Instagram. Huge shout out to our social media girl. She came in a couple of years ago and she's phenomenal with her reels. And she actually addresses this in particular and gives you a variety of different scenarios between greatest weakness. Why did you leave your last current opportunity? So please, I just want to throw this out there. If you're having problems with some interview questions, please go follow, because they are phenomenal and they give really, really great answers. But when I tell someone my greatest weakness is you got to sandwich it. Hey, this is what I'm really good at. Here's my area of opportunity. And here is what I'm doing to improve upon it in my next role. So I would say the sandwich. Everyone hates to hear the sandwich. It sounds cliche, but it works. And then less is more. People don't want long descriptions, and then you cause questions, like cause doubt and questions in their mind. So we want to say less is more. Here's what I'm good at. Here's my area of opportunity. Here's what I'm doing to improve on it. And I don't say weakness. I always say area of opportunity.
All right. One more from the preset questions. If you're asked what your previous salary is, how do you avoid saying it? Should you give what the median price is for the market?
It's actually illegal in the United States, in certain states, to ask that question. So I do want to lead in with, please check your state and check the state in which you're applying to if it is illegal to ask that question. So I'd want to lead in with that. It's actually illegal in Pennsylvania. So I have not had to ask that question, and it's going to be legal in New Jersey in the next couple of years. So I have not had people need to answer that question in a long time. If that you are in a situation where this does happen, I actually would recommend turning the conversation and say, your role would be an appropriate step in my career, work-wise and compensation-wise. That's how I would leave it. You don't need to tell them a number. You don't need to say, oh, this is a huge jump, right? Like, I don't want to tell them that, right? Like, we want to get as much money as possible. But your job in particular and the salary that you posted would be appropriate for a next step in my career and appropriate for the role that you're offering.
All right. Alexa says, I graduated 5 years ago. Can I still get internships?
There might be a hurdle being 5 years out. That would be the moment to start volunteering and start partnering from that perspective, because you're going to be competing against recent grads or juniors and seniors right now. But that would be a moment. Go out, volunteer, start freelancing from that perspective and building that sector of your portfolio you want to grow.
All right. Well, that's all the questions that have been submitted, but I have one. Can people contact you if they're looking for a job?
Yeah. Feel free to contact me. I mentioned this beginning, but I'll mention this now. I am client side now. So I go out with all of my clients and meet with them face to face, understand what opportunities that they have so I can hire designers. My lineage at Robert Half has been on the recruiting side. So I will send your information over to a recruiter based upon your current location. So it may not be me in particular who you're getting as your recruiter, but I have a fantastic team with a lot of tenure across the country. I would be thrilled to send your information to.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed Josh's. I know, and this might be too big to answer in the next couple minutes, but how has AI disrupted the traditional graphic design career ladder, junior, senior, art director, creative director, partner?
I don't think it's I think it's only enhanced. And like I mentioned before, if you start integrating it into your current design, you are 100% going to win an opportunity. People who are slowly starting to integrate it are going to win. AI is not perfect. It is not. I just showed you, I did Copilot. I had to redo all the designs and then I had to reformat it for myself just because I needed a little help just getting it into a presentation. But it's not perfect. It's not going to take us over. If anyone's paid, like I always joke, one of my colleagues paid that $50 to get their AI LinkedIn photo done. And like they came out with like 6 fingers. We're like, guys, like, no, like you will not be replaced, will not be disrupted. The only thing I would recommend is make sure you're looking at companies who hire up the ladder. So junior designer, I don't like using the word junior, fresh designer, up to creative director, because that shows me that there is area for growth and opportunity within. They're never going to replace that fresh designer. They're always going to need someone that's and they're always going to need to grow someone throughout their career. So that would be something I would look for as I'm looking at the org chart.
All right. Well, Sam, we're done. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and so open with your answers. I'm sure everybody here is very appreciative. Sam has given us permission to record the video and to post the recording on our YouTube channel. We'll post it on LinkedIn as well. So others who are not here will benefit from as well. So you're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat, lots and lots of thank yous. So thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Have a great weekend. And obviously, don't hesitate to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.